Welcome back, squirrels. It's your favorite ADHD baddie, Shy. Lex's recovery is going very well. And me? Well, I've been out traveling the world, so she can live vicariously through me while she heals. Anyway, I'm sharing another favorite episode of ours for you to enjoy while we're on our brief hiatus. This one is episode 6. It's about our diagnosis. Our diagnosis can feel like a key that unlocks the doors to our past, present, and future. We can learn so much about ourselves. So enjoy unlocking your doors in this episode. Hey, Lex.
What's up, Shy?
Are you ready? It's time for another episode of Black Girl, Brown Girl, Squirrel. So tell me something. You said when you got diagnosed, it felt like relief.
Mm-hmm.
So how was your diagnosis a key to unlocking your past and making you feel relieved?
It's almost like reading information about ASD, how it presents in women specifically, how it presents in little girls specifically. It's like as soon as I read that stuff, it's like I got a reel in my head that suddenly was like my entire childhood just kind of like went through my head. People say my life flashed before my eyes. It was like that, but like I wasn't dying. I was just learning stuff. I could suddenly start remembering things about my childhood that at the time might have felt off, but I didn't have words for it.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe I didn't think about a whole lot as an adult because of secondhand embarrassment for myself, which is like secondhand embarrassment for the firsthand embarrassment I had. And then being like, oh, that's why that happened. So then it was almost like a deeper understanding of myself in a sense of when I'm first thinking, okay, I have some social challenges and I hate eye contact and I don't know how to do this and I don't know what to do when I go in a room. And then going like, no, when I was a kid, making friends was very complicated because I didn't understand how personal space worked. Like I have distinct memories of me like trying to talk and trying to make friends and like these girls leaning back because they're like, oh, why are you so close to me? And that was the feedback of me being like, well, whatever you're doing right now, that's probably not right. Like that's probably not how you make friends. So maybe be particularly aware of how close you are to people. Okay, check. I got that. It was like I realized all the ways that I had been doing self adjustments so that I could seem less socially inept.
Got it.
And then once I was reading that the things I was doing, it's like you ain't make up nothing new, child. This is most women in your situation were doing this. I was like, oh my God. Like it was like, wow. So there was relief with like it's like that key unlocking was almost like unlocking memories and then explanations and they were going together. And it was like putting pieces of a puzzle together of like this is how you come up with the person that ends up being Alexis.
When you said that, it made me think about how, because you're a math person, so it made me think about how I would always go to the back of my workbooks where the answer key was, because math, especially word problems, would scramble my brain. So I would always go to the back, get the answers, and that would help me a little bit in unscrambling all of that. That's kind of what, when the key unlocked all these things for you and it's like started matching up. And I was like, yeah. And I guess I can understand that too, because it was somewhat similar with me, like, but mine unlocked the emotions that went with all of that. Why did I make this decision? This key unlocked that emotion. Why was I avoiding doing X, Y, and Z? This key unlocked that emotion. Why did I feel this so deeply? Like I had a really hard time understanding why I was, when I tell you I was sensitive as a child, I was sensitive. back in the day, they would have like Hallmark commercials come on TV for the cards. I would cry on those. If the fly died in a movie, I'd cry. Like I was constantly crying. My
Mm,
mom's like, why are you always crying on stuff? I was super sensitive. And I was getting bullied at school, and that also added to that and everything. But getting my diagnosis kind of unlocked the key. It was like, part of it was because of, having the rejection aspect of it. That was part of the people pleasing. I didn't want to be disliked. I wanted everybody to like me. And why can't you like me? And I'm doing everything to be your friend. I'm doing everything to be picked on the team. And I'm trying to be smart, and I'm trying to help you in class so you can be, you could feel good and be
mm.
smart too. All these different things. It unlocked emotions for me to explain a lot of what happened in childhood, teenage years, adulthood. Yeah, that was a powerful, like I said, once I've sat in it, that was a powerful thing for me. Like, okay.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Then it went to this is why I did that. But at first it was all the emotions that came with stuff that came up to me in my head initially. And
Mm.
I think, it's funny. So how has it now like reframed or reshaped your past for you?
So many things come into my mind there. One in particular is, we touched on it a bit, the whole, this kid is gifted.
Mm,
This kid is so, so smart.
mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways that is almost confusing when you look at how a lot of autism is typically spoken about. It's typically like this person is nonverbal,
Yes.
is struggling in different classes and things like that. I had the complete opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was highly verbal. I was reading at age 2. I distinctly remember my parents saying they went to a parent teacher conference when I was in, I don't know, probably elementary school. And the teacher was like, hey, Alexis is doing great. She's kind of made up her own math. And they were like, what do you mean? They're like, well, the math that we are doing in class, she is looking at these problems. She's getting the same answer, but she ain't doing what we teaching. She is doing something different. But what she's doing, it like works, like it's correct. But I don't even know where she got this from.
Wow.
So when you're operating like that, they're like, this kid is so smart. This kid is, oh. And then you do get kind of put on that pedestal that you kind of mentioned in an earlier episode. Like you're,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be kind of weird. Now, one thing that I did figure out that feeds a lot of what kind of positive reinforcement works for me, what kind of things motivate me.
Mm.
I am motivated by Alexis is very smart and she figures these things out by herself and then she just does it. But what does that mean? Alexis is not a person that asks for help a lot.
Oof.
So when you become older,
That
you
burnout.
are, that burnout is something serious. Been there, been through it, didn't have a good time. So things like that. And then it's like, okay, then you're known socially in class is like, oh yeah, it's that girl, she's smart. Yeah. So you're like, oh, sometimes I can get some good feedback socially for being known as the smart kid. In these ways, it's actually helpful. Okay. Keep going down that path. Maybe you'll make
Mm.
some friends this way. Maybe things will work out for you in this way. That's one of the first things I thought about. I barely remember the question you asked me, but about all about the past. And
Well,
I was like,
just
"Ooh, that one,
yeah.
that one really had me thinking." And then when I started looking at people who have like level 1 autism, previously known as Asperger's, that kind of is more common in that part, in that particular diagnosis. That kind of like being able to have verbal communication is fine. And then also seeing things about with women and girls in particular having even less of those quote unquote common challenges. Like we're more likely to be good with like reciprocal conversation
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or like pretending to not have certain issues. Like eye contact, I hate it. I definitely remember, like distinctly remember telling myself, you got to learn how to look people in the eye. So figure that out. So like force yourself to look people in their eye. Or look in the eye, but really I'm looking at your forehead. I'm looking at that
Yes.
spot in between your eyes.
Yes.
Look at your nose. If you have glasses, it's actually easier for me because I feel like there's a little bit less of that intensity in it when I'm
Yeah.
looking at you. Things like that. Reading, that is a common thing that girls with autism would do. I was like, oh, this is deeper than I thought.
And it's funny because what I was asking you about was like, how did it reframe your past and make you look on your, on your past experiences? And for me, it was similar. It was like, oh, so that's why I used to daydream a lot
Mm,
because I was bored. I was
mm-hmm,
not able to function or think on this topic. So my mind wandered, and the safest way for me to do that was to daydream and keep my mouth shut sitting in class. I also too, I got that whole gifted thing, and and I've had conversations even recently with my husband about that, like, well, what does gifted mean now? So I'm gonna have to go back and talk to him about that because they do still have gifted programs, gifted students, and so on. And I'm like, I was called gifted, but that was just because I could hyper focus on reading because it was something I really liked. Reading and writing were two things I absolutely loved. So being hyper focused, not a problem. That didn't mean I was gifted. That just meant that was a subject that I could excel at because I really liked it.
mm-hmm,
And normally we are, quote unquote, labeled as gifted in one particular subject, most cases. It's not
mm,
necessarily all subjects, right? So you might be a super smart student, but you have one that's your strong suit than another, is kind of what I'm saying. And I look back on that, and I look back on, you said something that made me kind of start thinking even just now, like the recognition that we got for certain things. So I like, for me, I grew up doing dance, ballet, modern, African, jazz, all different types of dance. I excelled at it because I loved it so much. Even now, I love music. If I had my Meg knee still, child, but I love to dance, and I'm going to dance. You put on some music, I'm going to dance. And that was the one area where the kids would always give me praise. Was,
mm,
oh, can you get up and do a dance right quick? They would put on some music and I would do an impromptu dance. I was always selected to be a soloist or to be the main duet partner with somebody else in a production or something like that. Dance was where I excelled. So kids would never say anything about that. Me and maybe one or two others, we gave the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech every year for Martin Luther King Day. Like every year, or
mm.
every Black History program. And my mom still teased me about that because she was like, you would just be saying, I have a dream. I have a dream today. I have a dream, and she would sit there and she would mock me, but she was like, but you could give this speech like it was your speech. It wasn't just like you memorized it. So I excelled in theater. I excelled in oratory type things. I excelled in dance. And so when the other kids recognized that, that made me feel good because then I felt accepted. But outside of that,
Mm,
unless I was doing double dutch, it was like, or tetherball or being good at something like that, they were like, they didn't want to bother with me and would pick on me. So it really helped me to see, it helped me to start looking at, well, where was I getting my rewards and recognition from?
mm-hmm,
And being on the stage allowed me to be somebody else different, whether I was dancing or acting. I wasn't me.
mm, mm,
You're always taking on another role, always. So I wasn't me. And people accepted whoever I was when I was up there, even if they wouldn't accept me. So, those types of things. So you learn to put on the mask and to hide certain things. And for those of us that are new to this world of neurodivergence and everything, and we're talking about masking. Masking is when you're hiding certain behaviors that are associated with your neurodivergence. So, you're being a people pleaser to cover up the fact that you don't like being rejected, things like that. You're wearing a mask. And it's funny because in high school, I actually wrote a poem about hiding behind the mask. But I was talking about hiding behind a mask from childhood trauma versus what I'm dealing with now. I did not know the connection there. So that came back and was interesting to me. But anyway, I think it as we go through and you think through life and all the decisions and everything, you just go, that one key just keeps unlocking. It's like the master key to unlock all these different things that we just never understood about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it unlocked and did some things more in a positive way for you or more of a negative way?
That's an interesting question. I think that initially the positive part was just, again, that common thread of validation of like, I had a feeling this is why these things were going this way for me, and now I'm confirmed this is the case. I still think in the beginning there was some embarrassment of like replaying things in my head. I think a lot of stuff that I probably purposely didn't think about because I was like, ugh, I hate this. And then with reading about common experiences of young girls on the spectrum, I'm like, ooh, I did that. Oh no, that happened. I did that too. Oh no, oh no. Like that was my general reaction to it. So I think there was a lot of discomfort in that sense. And there were even situations where, like, I can recall, without going into too much detail because don't want that, but like a scenario where I was, because of me not understanding certain social norms and cues of the situation, I was actually in danger, but did
Mm,
not know I was in danger.
mm,
So then I'm like, oh, wow, no wonder that went that way. I had no idea that this and this meant that. And what this
mm-hmm,
person meant was this, and this is how I ended up in this situation. So
mm-hmm.
in situations like that, and then you're realizing, oh no, well, no wonder this was so complicated because now you've compounded trauma with your brain just working differently anyway. Having a traumatic event makes your brain work differently going forward. So
Yes.
you've got thing on top of thing
Mm-hmm,
that will affect the way that you react to situations
mm-hmm.
forever. So it,
Yeah.
and I remember that specific instance being something that like really occupied me for about a day thinking about it.
Wow. And I think too, that's why, we emphasize seeking out a therapist, because when you start getting an understanding of how your brain naturally functions.
Hmm.
This is a natural function of your brain. So when we recognize how our brain naturally functions, and then we start tying it back, taking that master key and unlocking all these different things, sometimes there's some things there that are serious to unpack, and we
Hmm.
need help doing that. Like sometimes if your suitcase is too heavy, you're going to ask for some help so you can, lift it and do whatever you have to do with it. So it's the same thing here. And I don't want anyone to be afraid to go and to get a diagnosis or to get validation of what they've already been thinking and feeling. I want you ladies to feel like it's okay to go and to get that, and just know that it's also okay to go and to get the assistance you'll need to deal with the emotional and mental impact that may come from now having this key that's unlocking all of these once locked doors that are in your mind. Because it's the more you know yourself, and I've said this before, but the more you know yourself, the more empowering it becomes. You show up differently in spaces. You look at
Mm.
things differently, right? You don't just sit down and have conversations. You're looking at how you're having the conversation, how you're receiving the information, you're analyzing things. And for you to have the challenge of the social cues and things like that, I can only imagine how much more work that it took. But what I will ask for those who might be struggling with that, was it worth it to take that effort and go that extra mile to understand social cues better or conversations better? Not so much that you can be more neurotypical, but
Mm-hmm.
was it beneficial to you and worth that extra step just for you and where you are in the world?
Mm-hmm. And are you speaking as regards to my own observations that I did to understand social cues, or conversations I had in therapy about the fact that sometimes these cues are hard for me?
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me clarify. So I guess what I'm asking is, you recognize that you didn't know social cues and all of this as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you started working on ways to do that. Then, of course, you've got your validation that yes, you're on the spectrum, and then now you're in therapy and you're like, okay, now I need to work through and make sure that I do understand these things properly. So was all of that work combined worth
Mm.
it so that you could interact differently with people, so to speak? Or was it not as worth it just because of the emotional and mental toll that it takes to do that work?
The answer to that question is so complicated because I would say that in therapy, I didn't learn about social cues. In therapy, I didn't learn how to read those things. In therapy, it's more like, because at this point, I'm already here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've already part of that masking and kind of like coping strategies that a lot of us will do happened while growing up. So, how do I act in this room? I looked around and I figured out there's a pattern to how we do this most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm in my 30s, so I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And if I had gone to a behavioral therapist as a child for many situations, that's what would have happened. They would
Mm-hmm.
have said, hey, when people introduce themselves, you and they say, how are you? You don't just say good and then stop. You have to say something else to them. And like you're laughing, that's the thing I had to be taught as a kid because it never occurred to me I was supposed to.
Right.
And I
Right.
is that a thing every kid is taught? Do, are kids all taught that they have to say that back, or did they figure it out? I'm genuinely asking you this question. Did you
I
have to be
you
taught that?
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it. Well, I would say that yeah, it is something that they're taught to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
because just like I've seen, and the reason why I'm saying is, since I don't have children of my own, I'm looking at how
Mm-hmm.
I've seen others do it, and I have seen them with their young kids go, if someone gives them something and they don't say anything back, there's like, you're supposed to say thank you, thank them for the
Mm-hmm.
gift. So I think it is something that's taught. I think the difference is how your brain receives that. And since
Mm-hmm.
your brain thinks differently, it may not have received it as I'm supposed to say something back. I've seen parents say to their kids, well, tell them how you're doing. I'm fine. Okay, and what else? So ask them how they're doing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see it often, but I've seen it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
also too, to your point, that's a very small percentage where I have personally seen that. I
Yeah.
have seen more where kids imitated their parents. So again, that's that ability to pick up on
Yeah. Yeah.
certain things.
There's
So
imitation. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think because it is scientifically proven, kids are visual before they're verbal. So even though we talk to babies and we goo goo gaga at them, that's why kids can start communicating as early as 5, 6 months with their hands if you're teaching them sign language from birth, because they're
Mm-hmm.
visual, and eventually they'll pick up, oh, that's milk, this is mama, this is dada, and all, so they can start communicating with you. It's not that they don't understand what they want to say, they don't know how to say it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you apply that to someone that is on the autism spectrum, they're seeing these things, but their brains are not communicating to them how they're supposed to use it. How are they supposed to interact? So it goes out the
Yeah.
window.
Yeah. I think, yep, you just said it. I think a lot of things I would see and I have no idea what that's got to do with me. Like it doesn't occur to me that I'm supposed to be that this is something I should also do. I think it took me longer to get there. So,
Mm,
which is why, like, I think a lot of this does happen in your childhood and you pick this up. But I think it might have happened later for me, which is why I can remember some of these things clicking for me because it happened later in life. So it was at an age where I would have more of a memory of that sort of thing.
right.
So
Right.
all that to say, in regards to the question that you asked me, like I said, in therapy, I didn't get that kind of information because I'm at a different point. A lot of the help I would get would just be that kind of thing that I kind of had to figure out on my own as a kid. I think there have been some more situations that might happen that I have asked for feedback on in therapy, just like, I don't understand why this and this is happening. Or I might have said, okay, and I'm going to pick on my roommate because she's fine. Like, she'll be cool with this. We've had things where she might tell me something in the middle of the day when I'm working. And I was like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, why do I even need to know that? Like, why am I supposed to say something in response to that? Why do I care
Mhm.
about this? And I was thinking it was something totally different. And the therapist said, well, I want you to look at this from the mindset, from the frame of neurodivergence. Were you busy while she's trying to tell you this information? And I'm like, well, yeah. She's like, so is it typically when you are doing one task that maybe it does not work for you to someone to interrupt you while you were doing this one task? And I said, oh, yeah, for sure. Don't bother me when I'm doing something. I'm doing this. And if you say anything to me that ain't got nothing to do with this thing I'm doing, I'm so confused on what I'm supposed to do with that information. So she's like,
Mm.
you're getting input and you literally don't know what to do with it. So being able to like kind of have that opened up to me, just like, ooh, look at it that way, it made me then go back on every conversation I've had where I'm just like so frustrated and confused with someone telling me something because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. A lot of
Mhm.
times my response might be nothing. Like I might literally just be silent because I'm like, I don't know what to say to this. And I know it's rude to tell people just straight up, I don't care. Like I can't say that. That's not
Yeah.
nice. I figured out at this point that's not nice. But that's the only thing I have that I want to say. I don't care. Or okay. Or so. Because I'm trying to understand, why is this piece of information in any way relevant to me? Why did you interrupt my day to tell me this? And
Wow.
she's like, when people are making friendships, when you're forming relationships, there's a bid for closeness. And part of a
Mhm.
bid for closeness is sharing with people. And I'm like, oh. Oh, they're telling me this because they're my friend. And as silly as that sounds, that had never occurred to me. And it still is something that I have to remind myself. Like, yeah, people share these kinds of things because they like to share things that they enjoy with people that they enjoy. And I don't necessarily do that. Just because I enjoy something doesn't mean I need to tell you about it because I experienced the full range of the joy about it by myself. I
Mm.
don't think I need to share it with somebody else. And not because I'm like, I don't want you to know, it's because I simply didn't care. Like I didn't think about telling you. It's like those things are not related. My happiness and your knowledge of the thing that makes me happy in my mind are not related. But I think that's actually a typical part of forming relationships, which is something I was reminded of when doing some research. And I don't think that ever quite developed for me in the way that we typically see.
I swear, I am so fascinated by you and your brain and how you think. And I mean that in a good way, not in a bad way, because it gives me pause to think about looking at things from multiple situations. So, as someone who does coaching and training for people, I'm constantly looking at, is this going to work for this type of learner, this type of person? This is not. I have to look at things in a number of ways, and even still, it's still done through a particular type of lens, right? And
Hmm.
so when I talked to you and you explained certain things to me, and I was just, to me, if you hadn't said that you felt a level of completeness, is kind of what I'm hearing. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm.
Like there's
Mhm.
a certain level of completeness. This brought me joy. I am complete in my joy. I don't need anybody else to celebrate this or sharing this or this is that. I am thoroughly
Mhm.
complete. If you
Mhm.
hadn't told me that, I would sit here and just go, wow, what a lonely existence. Because see Now she laughing at me, y'all, and I'm being for real, for real.
No, that's so funny because I never would have thought that's where you would have went. But when you said it out loud, I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense. But my initial reaction to that is, but I don't need you for me to be happy. Like, I don't need you to participate in what makes me happy for me to be happy.
And see, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that I think is important to understand
Mm-hmm.
about autism in particular is because, and I can say this because I've have friends who have children that are on the spectrum, but on the other end of the spectrum where they are, some are nonverbal, some are literally in their own worlds. I
Mm-hmm.
remember I went to do an interview for a little girl who was autistic. She was nonverbal to those that were not inside her headspace, if you will, right? So I'm over there at the house. I'm talking to the mom. We're talking about different things. I had a Barney doll. So back in the day, if you guys don't know who Barney is the purple dinosaur, and you used to squeeze the paw. I squeezed the paw, and he would sing the song. So I brought that as a way of potentially breaking ground. And the
Mm-hmm.
little girl did not want to interact with me. So I just sat the doll down, and she came over eventually, and she picked him up and sat him down beside her. And then I went and grabbed him and came and brought him back. That was the only time she even acknowledged my presence. Was like, I know this heifer did not pick this doll up and bring it back. So she went, picked it up, and she sat it back down by her, and she turned back to whatever program she was watching. Never once acknowledged me, never once looked my way, because I didn't need to be in her world to complete her world. And then eventually she figured out how to turn them on, and she turned them on, and she just sat there. But I've observed children, and now some I know are young adults, that have that bubble around them. It's like, I don't need you in my space. I'm perfectly fine in my space. I'm happy in my
Mm-hmm.
space. In my space, it's this and it's that. And it's, whatever it is for them that constitutes that space. So to hear you describe that, like, I don't need you to be in this part in order for me to feel a certain type of way or to celebrate this. Because most of us want to celebrate our joy with other people. You're like, no, I'm good. I can celebrate by myself. I am so. If you hadn't shared that completeness with me, that really would make me go, that's got to be a lonely existence. And I don't think we realize, I think we attribute our emotions, just like we do with animals. We attribute our emotions onto animals to assume things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we do with a lot of people that are on the spectrum is, oh, they must be feeling lonely and left out and this is, and they're in their own world and they're not. The child that's over there stimming and in their own world, and they might be thinking of, you always see in TV, the prodigies and stuff, that they're doing math or they're doing art or doing
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but you don't know what's going on in their brains. But they might not be feeling what we think they're feeling, which is isolation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you just helped me to appreciate that they may not be feeling that. That's us attributing our feelings to them, because that's
Mm-hmm.
how we would feel if we were quote unquote neurotypical thinkers. That's how we would feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, so with learning, then, like, this is how typically interactions happen with people and why they would make that bid for that closest, share the information. It then made me reframe conversations I've had. And then it helps me so that when this comes up again, I don't, well, that's a lie. I do immediately still feel like this is purely an interruption. But then I can go to the next step and say, but there's probably a reason for it.
Mm,
And so it takes a little bit of the confusion out because
okay.
I still might be confused about why are you telling me this, but I can be like, and if you get to the end and it ain't got nothing to do with me, I'm like, they told me this because I'm their friend and they just wanted to share. And I can go, okay. And then I can get back to what I was doing. Or it helps me.
You said, and then I can get back to what I was doing.
I can also communicate to close friends like, hey, I love you so much. You're my friend. You're gonna have to wait to share certain things with me until I am not in this hyper busy part of my
Mm,
day when I am very much focused on doing a task.
yeah,
Because I won't even be able to give you the kind of interaction that you're looking for because I am not in the place to do that for you right now.
yeah.
So if you
Oh, trust
wait,
me. I've so learned that through our text, our group text. You're like, if you send me
yeah,
one more Instagram reel or whatever, and I'm like, this is
yeah.
how I show you that I'm thinking about you all day. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
why? Why are you even thinking about me? I don't care. I'm working.
No, no. Okay, for y'all listening, we do have a friend group text. That joint is muted, and I will go days without looking at it because of most of the stuff in there, I ain't really got nothing to say to it, and it don't make no sense for me to say anything. So it's just there. And then on the times when I feel like looking at it, I'm like, okay, what does that say? And I might be like, I got nothing for that. So I don't say nothing for that. And then other times I'm like, hi, I watched it and that was funny. So good job. So
If it's something that I need her to really give attention to, I will send it to her separately, and I know that it
hmm
will be a couple of days before she'll
not
respond.
a
But
couple of days.
sometimes it's okay. Okay. In all fairness, sometimes it's within the same day, and then other times it's a couple of days. But on the group chat, I don't even expect her to respond to half the stuff that's flying around there because she's just, But what I appreciated was you at least let me know. It wasn't like, friend, I'm trying to ignore you, or why are you bothering me all day long? You're like, really, when this stuff is flying around too much, it's too much for me. I ignore it. I go to the last
hmm
thing that was sent, kind of thing.
hmm
Unless I specifically mention something about BTS, then she's gonna jump on it and respond back right away.
And that depends on what it is.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. But no, but that's also too, I think, is part of, like you said, it's not just the building the friendships, it's learning how to communicate as well.
hmm hmm
And there are, one of the things with some of us with ADHD, we're over communicators. We completed other people's sentences, different things like that. And most people say, oh, well, that's just how we communicate, or that's typical. No, this is
That ain't
something
how I
that's
communicate.
no, no. And we have to take time, just like you have to take time to learn social cues and pick up on things. We also have to take the time to pick up on social cues. Like for me, for the longest, I just did not know that people considered that rude. And I
Mm-hmm.
also didn't know how often I was doing it, because it
hmm
was just the way that I had always communicated, even within my family, which I've talked about before. So when people are side eyeing me at work, or when people felt like I was trying to dominate a conversation, I was like, no, I wasn't. But you said a
mm
really cool idea. And I was like, I'm backing you up. I'm like hyping you up. That's a good idea. And here's another way you can take that to another level. Now go and run with it. I'm not trying to take your idea. But people didn't see it that way. And
hmm
so I had to learn what collaboration really looked like in the neurotypical world and what that meant. And I did not realize that that's what I was doing. I now know better to know that's what I
mm
was doing. But,
hmm
like you said, we develop some of these coping skills and we're not exactly sure why and all that stuff. We're figuring out you know, how to make things work. I look back and I realized that some of my social interactions with people were a turnoff. And that was because I was a people pleaser and I wanted to say yes. And if you told me there was something you like that we both like, I'll give you a perfect example. So I shared a cube with this young lady. Her name was Marianne. And let me preface this by saying that in my department at the time, there was only two of us that was Black. There was one Filipino and one Chinese girl out of 20 some odd, 20 to 30 people in this department.
hmm
So there wasn't a lot of cultural connection in the Martha Stewart department, but we
Did
tried.
you say? Did you say it was the Martha Stewart department?
Yes, because at that time she was huge, and that was
hmm
exactly who they wanted. That's who they were. That's who they wanted to be. And that's a whole nother story. So I will have to get into all of that at another time. But anyway, in this
hmm
particular situation, so Marianne and I shared, a cube wall. When Sarah McLachlan's song came out,
hmm
Angel,
hmm
I absolutely loved that song. And I had a radio at my desk that had the removable speakers. And so Marianne said how much she liked that song. And I was like, oh, really? So every time it came on, I would just share my speaker just for that one song and pull it back. And it wasn't until later that I realized she was like, oh, thank you. Oh. It was too much. And here I am thinking we're bonding. This is a friendship type thing. We're sharing. This is something we have in common that we both like. But it was, I don't want to say offensive, but it was pushing her away. She was like, oh my God, here comes this girl again with this.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, but she likes me. And she likes the same song that I like. So we're good. Not picking up on the fact that there was still not just literally but figuratively a wall there between us, which later came out in a not so pleasant situation. But like I said, that's a story for another time. So we all have to learn our social cues. We all are readjusting. And so now, so you're talking about you being in your 30s and you're looking back on this. So imagine being in your 50s and you're looking back over all of this and you're like, whoa. And you have come up with all these different coping mechanisms, and some of them work, some of them still don't work. And you're trying to figure it out. And you're thinking, and I keep going back to my big age because that's how it feels. It's like you said, you felt like there at one of the episodes, like you felt like there was a missing code or a missing piece that should have been put into there.
Yeah, a manual. I didn't get mine.
Yeah.
I didn't get my manual.
And I'm going back and I'm looking like I read the manual. I followed what it said, but what didn't I understand about this chapter? Why didn't this work? This is what they told me to do. Why didn't this work? So you're missing sections and I got all the sections and still can't figure out what's going on. That's what it seems. That's why I said this whole thing is a spectrum, because there's so much. And even now I sit back and I go, okay, all right. I see why that was exhausting for some people. I see why that was exhausting for me. It's just, it's wild. It is so wild.
It is. And so I guess as far as is it worth it, I would say yes. The work I have done. So the work I've done to understanding social cues growing up, I'll say it's net neutral, because part of that was masking so that I didn't stand out too much and make other people uncomfortable, so that then eyes aren't on me for being the person who made things uncomfortable. But it has, paying attention to those things do help me to be able to form relationships of some kind. And then being able to ask more questions in therapy, bring up different things, me thinking I'm talking about something else, and her being like, no, this is from that other thing we talked about. It's helpful because even though I do find a lot of like solace and comfort in like by myself, I am still a human and humans are still social. So we all have a need for closeness with other humans. That is how we are built. It is a necessary thing. So to be able to understand people a little bit better helps me to keep building on and cultivating the relationships that I do have and the ones that I want, and how to keep them going.
That makes sense. I can appreciate that. And I too will say that it has been worth it. Is it work at times? Sometimes, yes. But I look at it this way. I've been working at this all my life anyway, not knowing it. Now I just know what I'm working towards and why I'm working so hard, and none of us want to be in a job where we're working hard and you're trying to figure out what am I doing this for? And you don't have a reason. You don't have a why. So now I feel like we have a why. We know why we're doing this. We know why we're working so hard, and that sort of a thing. And then also too, I think it has helped to change the depth of my relationships with people. I have always been a person who has valued relationships and close relationships. But I've also been one who, like I said, being a people pleaser, I would just allow people to say and do things and not necessarily stand up for myself because I didn't want to lose the friendship. And that strength came along the way for a lot of different reasons, along with some therapy and stuff. But now my friendships are more, I feel, not having more depth, but it's more mature. It's based on
Mm.
things that are much more emotionally deeper and much more tangible in a way. I'm not sure how to explain that, but I look back on, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, as you know. So,
Mm.
I will not hesitate to tell you I love you every time I see you, or to give you a hug, or this, and that. But I also recognize that that can be too much for some of my friends. So sometimes I just step back and I wait to take the cue from them on how they want this interaction to go, you know. And so the more that I take the time to observe other people and get to know them for who they are rather than for who I perceive in my mind how the relationship is supposed to go, because that's the proper norm, if that makes sense, then I go, oh, okay, so it's much deeper. So my interaction with Jazzy is different than my interactions with you sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that, okay, Alexis is very much like, hey, I get you, I vibe you, but I still need to put this into some kind of context. Whereas
Mm.
with Jazzy, it's just like, I could be like, hey girl, da da da, and it's like an instant thing that's there. But we're
Mm.
also both ADHD, so
Yeah.
we can connect with
Y'all got the same thing happening
yeah. So we connect
very
in that way
intensely.
too. Yes. Yes, very much so. Very much so. But it's just when you really, I think it also, a lot of people will say, well, that's just normal. You just grow up and you mature. It's a different level of maturity. It's a different level of
Mm.
understanding. It's a different level of seeing people, where you're meeting them where they are and completely accepting them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. And trying to understand that. Like, I remember when we were on our way to the Epic High concert and we were having our conversation, which is one of the first times we had a really in-depth conversation about your being autistic and my ADHD. And I was asking some things, but I remember I said to you, which is one reason why it kind of gave me pause, is I talked about what it was like I always wanted to have a house where people felt warm. Like when they came in, they felt like this was home. And I said, I feel that at your house. And you were like, can you explain what that means? Because I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. So that's an emotion that not everybody feels or gets or understands. And it kind of blew my mind. And I've thought about it often. I was like, okay, well, how would I describe this to somebody? What
Mm-hmm.
that feels like. And so I now think about, when I go to say certain things to you, how do I connect it so that you will get it and then feel the way that I hope you would feel when I say it?
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense because abstract emotions are difficult for me. Like I can't connect them. So when
Mm,
people start attaching emotions to like just like rooms and things, I'm like, I don't understand what that is. I don't even know. Like I don't even know how to ask because I don't even know what you're saying. But
and
I do
I don't
remember that
understand that.
conversation.
Yeah,
I do
I
remember that conversation because I was like a warmth, a feel in a house that feels like warmth, and I'm like, I don't get it, I don't get it. And I remember you did break it down a little bit more, and I understood at the time. Do I remember that explanation right now? No, but I do remember leaving that conversation, understanding more of what you were talking about. But yeah, that's a thing, and it affects friendships and stuff in ways where I find myself often having to ask more people, what do you mean by that? Which,
mhm.
depending on the closeness, because closeness might mean that they understand me as a person more, will
Yeah.
affect the response I get to certain questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, when you question them for something that is maybe they've said freely all the time, and you might be the first person that asks them, what does that mean? Like, what is that? Sometimes people can immediately go to defense
Yes.
because they think by you asking me, what does that mean? What you're really saying is, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. I trust you know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. And I figured since it's about you, I would ask you what you were talking about to help me understand you. But that doesn't always go that way.
Right. Doesn't get translated. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I've had to like figure out. Okay, is this somebody I can actually even ask this question to, or is it somebody who I'm just like, okay, well, they said that thing and that didn't make no sense, but I'm not even really pressed about it because I don't really care that hard because I'm not that close to them. But if I'm close to you, I'm like, I want to understand. So I'm going to ask the question.
You know, you just helped me to come up with an analogy to help other people. It's kind of like when you are learning to speak a new language,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's dialects within that language.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, you know, you're talking to people, so you're learning a new language, so you're talking to them in the language that you're hoping that they understand, but you're not realizing, or they're not realizing, they're speaking a different dialect. You're speaking the same language, just a different dialect. So, and
Mm-hmm.
because of that, some words are going to sound and be different. So when you're asking them to explain, that's why it's taken back. Like, why are you challenging my credibility and my this? You're like, no, 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 no. See, you instantly
Mm-hmm.
take it as, no, I'm taking what you're saying as credible. I just want to better understand because I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand what you're saying and why that pertains to me, and how do I make it pertain to me as it is. And then on the other hand, I'm the one that's in there going, I'm being skeptical about what you're saying because how do I know you got credibility and yada, yada, yada? Because I speak the language too, and I speak it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So it's just, it's coming at it from different perspectives, but it's us speaking the same language. It's just, which dialect are we speaking?
Mm. Listen, you just opened it up for me because I forgot that people don't usually take what words people say at face value. I typically do because I have to rely so heavily on verbal communication because nonverbal is not that easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot that other people might not live their life that way. So they're just like, nah, I'm asking this question because I don't trust you, bruh. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And so if that's what typically is happening, that is why my questions are being received in that way. So that might mean
Could
sometimes
be.
if I ask a question, I might have to preface it with a little bit more, just like, ooh, okay, I'm interested in what you're saying, but for reasons. I find that a little bit hard to understand. Can you explain that to me this way? Instead of me just being like, what that mean?
And why are you telling me? I'm not even trying to understand that right now. But it's just, it's interesting. So for our listeners out there that are on this journey, that are on this path and everything else, what would be kind of like your one takeaway? Because we've talked about how this has impacted us in a number of different ways, you know, academically to an extent. We didn't go a lot into that, but we have talked about
Hmm.
that in the past, our personal and professional and things like that. So what's the one thing you would want people to walk away with in understanding how having this diagnosis or confirmation is a key that can really help them to have a better future?
Understanding yourself on a deeper level can help you to understand how to keep growing in the way that you want to. Can help you understand which way is the best way for you to operate. How have you been moving through the world? How do other people typically move through the world? How can you better understand what they're doing since our life kind of is constantly us interacting with other people? So having that information is so key to helping you to know how to navigate the waters of your life because you're here and you're going to be here. So how can you make it best work for you? Having information about yourself can better put you in a better position to know what to do.
I agree. I agree. And the only other thing I will add to that is that it also helps to clear up, or to help you start having the words and a better understanding to clear up miscommunication,
Mhm.
because we aren't always understood,
Mhm.
and we try to convey what we're thinking or feeling, and it's not always well received. Like I said, you know, like I overly communicate about my thoughts and my feelings. And then sometimes that ends up being communicating too much and saying more than what I need to say. And then sometimes that is people cut me off like, okay, we get the point. And I'm like, no, but do you really get how I feel? Do you really understand? Yeah. And then on the other side, you have the very direct and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, but you didn't have to stab me without sharp that way, you know?
That's never my intent.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. So to me, having the key, it unlocks so many things. And yes, there's a ton of thoughts and emotions and so forth, but it really does help in the, like you said, in the relationship building and the relationship repair, because you now understand how you communicate and how you receive even more effectively, and how others are communicating and receiving. And it gives you pause to go, how do I say this in a way that is going to be clear to them, but still true to who I am and how I relate to the world? And
yep.
it helps to make that a little bit easier. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep working at it. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to cover in our podcast, please don't hesitate to let us know. You can send us a message on our fan page at fanlist.com/BGBG Squirrel. That's fanlist.com/BGBG Squirrel.